Welcome to the Introduction to Export Controls video in our Export Controls video series. Export controls are federal regulations that apply to all U.S. persons and entities. They control the export of items, information, and software for reasons related to national security and U.S. foreign policy. Violations of export control regulations can result in severe criminal and civil penalties, including fines up to $1 million per violation. So what is an export? Export means an actual shipment or transmission of items out of the United States. This might be a physical shipment through the mail or hand-carrying materials or an object like a laptop overseas. This includes materials or laptops you bring with you to scientific conferences. It also includes exchange of controlled technology with a foreign person in the U.S. or abroad through email, server access from a foreign country, visual inspection, or oral exchange of controlled technology by a foreign person in the U.S. or abroad. Export control regulations can be found at 3 different federal agencies: the Department of State, the Department of Commerce, and the Department of the Treasury. Regulations that address defense and military-related information and items are listed under the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, ITAR, which is housed under the Department of State, Directorate of Defense Trade Controls. These regulations include the U.S. Munitions List, the Debarred List, and Non-Proliferation Standards. The Department of Commerce, Bureau of Industry and Security, lists regulations under the Export Administration Regulations, EAR. This agency is responsible for items that are considered dual use. Dual use means that the items are usually used for commercial purposes but can also have military applications. All goods and services that are not covered under the State Department's U.S. Munitions List fall within the purview of the EAR. EAR includes the Commerce Control List, the Denied Persons List, the Entity List, and the Unverified List. Trade sanctions programs are addressed through the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, which is a part of the Treasury Department. The regulations from this agency include specific sanctions programs such as the embargo against Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Sudan, and Syria, as well as the specially designated nationals list and sanctions against groups of individuals such as terrorists and narcotics traffickers. So how do you know when information or an item is controlled and a license review might be or is required? Information is not subject to export regulations if it's publicly available, not proprietary information, and it's already published, it arises during fundamental research, it's educational, meaning it's taught in a catalog-listed course, or it's included in certain patent applications. Sometimes the answer to whether an item or information are controlled is maybe, and a license might be required. You should contact your export control lead for a license review if you're conducting research or activities involving listed equipment, software, chemicals, bioagents, or technology, if you're using technology not in the public domain, maybe it's technology or technical data received under a non-disclosure agreement, or if you're conducting activities that involve a sanctioned country, such as Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Sudan, or Syria, including travel to, research in, collaboration with, or shipment to, including hand-carried shipments. Finally, there are some situations where we can tell you that yes, a license will be required. You should contact your export control lead for help obtaining a license if you will be exporting by any means, including mail, hand carry, or actual shipment, listed equipment, software, chemicals, bioagents, or technology, items and technology modified for use in the military, or weapons of mass destruction, or research, activities, or exports that include a restricted country, entity, or individual. Remember that it can take 6 to 8 weeks to obtain a license, so make sure you confirm with your export control lead whether a license will be required well in advance of when you might need it. If you're not sure if your activity requires a license, you can contact your export control lead for help. The Fundamental Research Exclusion, FRE, exempts most on-campus university research from export control licensing requirements. It covers information, not items, resulting from basic and applied research in science and engineering at an accredited institution of higher education that is ordinarily published and shared broadly within the scientific community. Researchers are encouraged to publish often and share broadly the results of fundamental research. If you accept publication or foreign national access restrictions on your research will no longer fall under the exclusion for fundamental research. The exclusion from the regulations will not apply for research conducted outside the U.S. that falls under a U.S. munitions list category listed under the ITAR, such as space-related research. Research conducted outside the United States qualifies as fundamental research in most other cases if there are no dissemination or publication restrictions. Contact your export control lead for assistance in making a determination if your research being conducted outside the U.S. qualifies for the fundamental research exclusion. The FRE does not apply to tangible exports, export-controlled technology or technical data received from a sponsor or third party, export-controlled services such as a defense service, and research involving creation or use of certain encryption source code when the research involves nationals of Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Sudan, and Syria, including faculty, staff, students, or visiting scholars. Finally, transactions involving sanctioned countries, individuals, and entities, and restricted end uses such as chemical and biological weapon end use, rocket or UAV end use, or nuclear end use, must be reviewed independent of fundamental research for licensing requirements. Before we finish, let's take a look at a couple of items to check your knowledge. Which of the following items is an export? Click on the letter for the best answer. For this last item, how would you know if you need an export license? Remember that export control regulations may change frequently. If you're unsure about licensing requirements, want to verify whether a license is required, have more questions about export control regulations, or need other assistance, please contact the export control lead for your campus.